Welcome to this deep dive. Okay, so you sent us quite a stank of sources this time.
Yeah, a good mix. Articles, some personal stories, even a film recommendation.
All focused on, well, getting beneath the surface of building wealth, right?
Hmm.
Going beyond just the usual save more, spend less advice.
Exactly.
So our mission today is pretty clear. Jump right into these sources, pull out the essential insights, and basically give you a shortcut to thinking like someone who actually builds wealth.
It's about the psychology, really. That seems to be the thread connecting all these different pieces you sent.
It really does. So let's start there. This core idea that wealth isn't just about grinding harder, it's about working smarter. And like you said, it starts in the mind.
Mm-hmm. The sources talk a lot about thinking like the 1%, and, it's not necessarily about having $1 million today.
Right. It's about the mindset shift, adopting those ways of thinking that seem to differentiate people who do end up building significant wealth over time.
Yeah, and what struck me is how consistent the sources are on this. It's really positioned as the foundation. You have to move away from just uh, managing scarcity.
Or living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly. And shift towards actively looking for growth, opportunity, building assets. It's less about your current bank balance and more about how you operate mentally day in, day out.
Okay, so let's make that practical. How does this thinking actually translate into action? The sources bring up some specific things. First one, invisible spending.
Ah, yes, crucial. This is basically money just vanishing from your budget, silently.
Without you really noticing it.
Precisely. The sources call them sneaky hidden costs. It's often not the big flashy purchase, but, the small stuff.
Right.
Recurring charges, little impulse buys.
Things that just add up, like maybe that free trial that turned into a subscription you forgot about.
That's a classic example. Or, those small daily convenience buys that seem like nothing at the time. The point is to really encourage you, the listener, to think, where might my money be quietly draining away?
Identify the leaks. Got it. But, okay, the sources seem to say that plugging leaks isn't the whole story. They talk about shifting from just earning a paycheck to profit.
Yes, this is such a key pivot. Earning is just step one, right? The real leverage comes when you make that money start working for you.
Making your money make money.
Exactly. The sources really stress needing smart strategies to turn that regular income into something more lasting, financial freedom, actual wealth. It's about breaking that direct link between your time and your earnings.
Which naturally leads a lot of people to think about side hustles. But interestingly, the sources point out that many side hustles, well, they aren't actually profitable.
That's a really common pain point, isn't it?
Mhm.
The sources suggest there might be common mistakes holding people back. Maybe the pricing is wrong. Maybe the time invested just isn't paying off.
So you need to treat it like a real business, not just a hobby.
That seems to be the message.
Yeah.
Figure out how to make it generate real success, meaning actual profit, not just keeping you busy.
Okay. And then there's a big one. Real estate, often seen as, the path to wealth. But so many people think, I need a massive pile of cash to even start.
Right, the down payment barrier.
Yeah.
But the sources tackle this directly. They talk about creative strategies for building property wealth with little or even no money down initially.
So it challenges that assumption head on.
It does. It suggests that with the right approach, the right knowledge, you can start acquiring assets like property even without huge savings.
Which loops right back to that working smart idea, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And speaking of assets working for you, this did you know fact about McDonald's and the sources just blew my mind.
Oh yeah, did they make more from real estate than burgers?
Yes. It's kind of wild when you think about it.
It really illustrates the principle perfectly. We all see McDonald's as a burger joint,
It's fast food, yeah.
but their long-term wealth, their real foundation, is this massive portfolio of prime real estate they own under their restaurants. They buy the land, lease it back,
To the franchisees.
and that generates massive consistent income, and the land value goes up. It's like the ultimate example of focusing on the asset behind the obvious product.
Wow. Okay, that really reframes that paycheck to profit idea. Now, there's also this really small personal story in the sources, the yogurt story.
Ah, the yogurt story. I like this one. It starts so relatably. You're exhausted after work, maybe got a headache,
In there.
and you just want a small treat. Yogurt from the shop. Simple comfort.
Right. But then there's this little twist. The person checks a completely separate account. I think it was Forex copy trading, which is based.
Automatically mirroring trades of experienced currency traders. Yeah.
So a small account, maybe $100 capital, and they find this tiny profit, like $5.91.
Just enough.
Exactly enough to cover the cost of that yogurt. It's such a small thing, but it makes that idea of passive income or alternative income feel really tangible.
A little bit of money, working away in the background, covering a tiny everyday expense. It's powerful in its simplicity.
But the story went deeper, didn't it? It talked about a mindset shift. Initially, the person felt like, having enough is enough.
Comfortable, maybe complacent even. But then the sources mentioned COVID hitting, and that acted as a sort of catalyst.
Sparking this desire for more. But not just stuff.
No, not just accumulation. It was about a better life. The source mentioned wanting a home with a view, seeing the sky, clouds, a river.
For loved ones to have peace, quality time, a real contrast to their current situation, described as a noisy apartment.
That's a really powerful motivator. Moving from just enough to wanting something genuinely better, driven by quality of life goals.
It really is. And the takeaway from that little yogurt story,
That wealth building isn't usually some giant lottery win. It's step by step. It's those small choices, those little profits, the small wins adding up.
like that $5.91. It's proof that even small amounts working for you can make a difference. Bring a little bit of joy, cover a small need.
It really highlights valuing those incremental gains, doesn't it? Building momentum.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. The sources also had this Rich Reads Real Wealth section recommending the movie Boiler Room.
Right. Described as a pretty gritty look inside these high-pressure, slightly dodgy brokerage firms.
The big idea, according to the source, is how ambition, when it mixes with greed, can be incredibly dangerous. You've got this young guy lured in by promises of fast money.
Only to find out it's basically a scam targeting everyday investors.
So why does watching this matter for us trying to build wealth legitimately?
Because it's like a crash course in how scams work, how to spot red flags.
Yeah.
The source specifically mentions aggressive sales pitches, those guaranteed high returns, especially right off the bat.
Huge red flags.
Absolutely. Understanding the tactics is crucial for protecting yourself, protecting your own money from disappearing into one of these schemes.
But the action step is almost painfully obvious, but essential.
Do your homework. Due diligence before investing in anything. Check the company out, verify if they're legit. And remember that core idea. Real wealth takes time. It's not built overnight with some magic promise.
And the hot take adds a bit of flavor. Says it's maybe even grittier than The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, focuses more on the really devastating consequences, the life-ruining decisions. Presented as a must-watch to see scams from the inside and learn exactly what not to fall for.
Okay. So, bringing all these threads together, the sources wrap up with a really potent take this with you section, a personal realization someone had.
Right. This person describes starting out super focused on budgeting, like hyper-focused.
Spreadsheets, apps, the whole 9 yards.
Color-coded spreadsheets, expense tracking apps, aiming for the perfect budget.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us can relate to that initial drive to just control every penny going out.
For sure.
But the big insight they had was the budget wasn't actually the main problem, the real issue, a lack of income streams.
So optimizing spending could only take them so far.
Exactly. They realized that no matter how perfectly they managed the money they had, they weren't actually increasing their overall financial capacity. So they flipped the script, as the source puts it.
Shifted focus.
Shifted focus from primarily saving more to actively making more. And this whole section in the source material seems designed to help you, the listener, consider that same shift, focusing on generating income, building assets.
Without necessarily having to go through that extreme deprivation phase. Like the cancel Netflix, live on ramen kind of thing.
Precisely. It suggests there's a path focused on growth that doesn't require punishing yourself.
It really does tie it all back beautifully to that first point about mindset, moving from scarcity management to abundance creation.
Yeah, it's understanding that budgeting is important. It's a tool, but it's just one tool. The real power often lies on the other side of the equation, income and assets.
Okay, so let's recap the big takeaways from this deep dive into your sources. It seems to be, number one, the sheer power of mindset. Recognizing wealth building starts inside your head.
Definitely. Then being really aware of that invisible spending, the sneaky leaks.
And critically, shifting focus. Moving from just cutting costs to actively growing income and building assets.
Remembering that small wins, those little profits like the yogurt story, they add up. Consistency matters.
And finally, that non-negotiable need for due diligence. Protecting yourself before you invest.
It really is a journey, isn't it? Built step by step, consciously. Not just one big break.
So, to leave you with something to think about, directly inspired by the sources, Consider that yogurt story again. That idea of small, maybe easily overlooked financial wins adding up over time, bringing real, tangible joy. What could your yogurt moment look like if you started focusing, even in a small way, on growing income or assets?
Or flipping that, maybe take a moment to think about where invisible spending might be quietly impacting your finances right now. Which of these ideas resonates the most, and where might you want to start applying some of these insights?